looking back on it now, I wonder if I could have applied that to corporate America back in the day when you'd have to go through a full day-long interview, an interview with 6 different people with 8 different questions. And the last guy says, can you integrate this problem for me to show me that you know calculus because you're a mechanical engineering student? And you look at him and say, I think this interview's over and I'm walking out the door. That's hypothetical. That was definitely not anything that I can tell you.
It really just came off the top of your head very easily.
I heard that happen. I don't know.
Welcome to the Small Business Safari, where I help guide you to avoid those traps, pitfalls, and dangers that lurk when navigating the wild world of small business ownership. I'll share those gold nuggets of information and invite guests to help accelerate your ascent to that mountaintop of success. It's a jungle out there, and I want to help you traverse through the levels of owning your own business that can get you bogged down and distract you from hitting your own personal and professional goals. So strap in, adventure team, and let's take a ride through the safari and get you to the mountaintop.
Outros. Look at you with all the tech talk.
I do have that tech talk. We're in a studio right now, Alan.
Are we?
Well, one would call it a bar or one would call it a studio.
What do you think of this beer?
So I do like this beer. This one's...
So as you know, I'm from Oregon originally.
Well, hang on. Since Ed won't start filming this or recording this until we say cheers.
Oh, I heard about that.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Ed, roll tape.
Yeah.
So let's hear about this beer. This is Dead and Dead Rogue.
Yeah. So Rogue is one of my favorite breweries. It's in Southern Oregon. And one of my desert island beers is Rogue Dead Guy Ale. Cheers. And this is Dead and Dead Rogue, which they took Dead Guy Ale and they aged it in whiskey barrels. And I don't normally like the foo-foo stuff, like the bourbon that's
right,
rotated on the ocean and all that stuff. But you can actually taste...
I'm going to take umbrage with that.
You like that?
I'm taking umbrage because I do like that one. Jefferson's Ocean, raked like a crop. All right, so after
I
this,
don't like the peanut butter beers, and the
right.
foo-foo stuff. You can actually taste the whiskey in this. Can you?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
So I would prefer to just have a Dead Guy. But this is kind of fun. And by the way, it's a 9.5%.
This episode is going to be rocking by the time we're done.
You will be explicit within 5 minutes. I know you.
I think I got that going.
What are we talking about today?
Let's get this shit started. What?
There we go.
All right, we're rocking and rolling.
Not safe for work, folks.
All right, this episode, what we really want to talk about, and I've actually had somebody bring this up to me this week, and they said...
Was this a mailbag item?
This was a mailbag item from a guy who listened, but said, I don't feel like sending you the email. So here's what he said.
Yeah, this is technically...
It's close enough.
Yeah, okay.
He said, with your book that you wrote, what do you think the purpose of it was? I said, you mean From the Zoo to the Wild, your guide to entrepreneurial freedom and wealth? Well, let me tell you, in the middle of Panera Bread, with my arms spread, with the ladies from Christ the King Church sitting next to us doing Bible study, I let them all know that I said I thought it was about leaving corporate America to start my own business. He said, the way I read it, and he read it, how about that?
Yeah.
He said, I think it's about how to scale your home services business so you can start working on the business and not always be in the business or in the truck touching a customer and doing stuff at the people's house.
The E-Myth.
I'm like, look at him.
Wow.
He just dropped that on me.
Interesting.
And so I said, I think we had already teed up talking about how to scale, what to talk about, how do you do it. And he brought that up to me today, and I was like, this is perfect timing. So here we are. It wasn't a mailbag item because he didn't drop it over the stork or through the
I don't
US
think
mail.
to be a mailbag item, it has to be. I mean, it could be a text, Chris.
Okay, so
it was
verbal.
so literal. Yeah.
All right, it was verbal.
Yeah.
So that's what he said. He said, I think that's what you've done. And I went, okay, well, yeah, I guess I'm doing pretty good, almost a $5 million a year business, working on the business, taking time with you to talk about podcasts and maybe help other entrepreneurs.
Seem like a burden.
Well, you're not a burden. In fact, I even said, this guy brings the best out of me. They asked me, well, why are you doing this podcast? I said, well, I'd have the opportunity to work on my business, but I also wanted to start giving back to others about some of our story. I said, I can sit there and just kind of be calm and Chris. I said, but when I get with him and I have a 9.5% beer, you're only getting 17, 18% of me on the podcast, but I might get up to 25 or 26% today, baby.
We need to put a governor on that.
Here we go.
That's why I only brought one of the Dead and Dead guys.
All right. Well, good news is you can't see this on the podcast, but we've got a growler behind it. So we'll be drinking, we'll be talking, and let's talk about how to scale that business.
So I actually have a good little story to tell you.
Let's go.
There are a lot of people, obviously, everybody in business at some point you have to bring on an employee. That means you have to interview. And most people are not very good interviewers. And it's something that I actually learned over a gazillion interviews was how to be a good interviewer. But this story is actually not my story. It's a guy who worked for me, a really talented guy, Michael. And he called me up one day and he's like, "You think I'm a pretty good interviewer?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I think you do a really good job." And he goes, "You know how I'm always working on it?" And he goes, "I like to have a good icebreaker question." He goes, "So my latest icebreaker question is, tell me something about yourself that nobody else knows."
Uh-oh.
No, I thought it was a great question.
Okay.
But you
I jump right to the seedy underbelly of who Chris is.
first time he used the question, the response was, "I slept with my best friend's mom."
And there we go.
Yeah, and so that kind of goes
Whoa.
under the category of unintended consequences. You know, sometimes you have to think through what might come out. I'm not quite sure how the rest of the interview went. I certainly can question the judgment of the person who offered that answer, but that was the first thing that came to his mind. It was honest.
That's classic.
Yeah.
I've got some good ones. Usually the guys who come in with the whole dossier of all of their felonies and convictions and tell me why each one of them was wrongly convicted. I'm like, that's a great interview. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Not that I don't want to give chance to convicts, but in
So
our home
this
services,
assault,
we can't do it.
I was really provoked. Is that kind of what they're saying?
So back to these stories that you get, and that's what I want to talk about. The first thing to scale is you got to have people, and it starts with the interview, right? And some of these interviews that you get, and some of the responses you get, because with our world of home services, what you see is what you get. These guys, they can't come in, and if they try to pull the wool over your eyes, which is an old term.
Do you get resumes from these guys?
Not many.
Really?
No. Most of these guys have always worked for themselves. Resumes, if put together, usually put together either by their kid or their wife. And that's okay. That's not a prerequisite for me. For a lot of people in business, you're like, hey, you got to have a resume. In today's world, where we're at with hiring, I'm looking to see you face to face and see if you've got what it takes to be in our business and to see if you've got the skills and the experiences to do it. But I had one guy come in and I said, we do a background check, we do a drug test. Is there anything I should know before we get started? And he said, well, I'm like, oh, this is going to be good.
How much time do you have?
He said, you won't see this. He said, but there is something pending right now where I was assaulted and a firearm was discharged. I said, all right, well, let's go ahead and go through the interview. So we go through the interview and he put it all down. And as soon as he walked out, I said, okay, I'll let you know. We got some other interview people coming in, lying. Didn't even know if I had anybody coming or not.
Yeah, the old.
And I looked over and I pointed to my office manager. I said, Google that name now. And she Googles the name, and sure enough, what came up was it wasn't just a firearm discharge. He put a cap in that kid's ass because he found him with his old lady. And it's all out there and written up, and they're still going through the whole lawsuit and this stuff. But it's already in the paper.
So maybe the guy he shot was the guy that my buddy interviewed.
It might have been.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he didn't make it through the interview process either. So how do you find good people? I'm going to talk about as you scale.
Yeah.
You have to do people. Then you got to have a good process because I'm a process freak. But you also have to have technology.
So I am going to make a confession to you. You and I have differed a little bit when it comes to customer service on process versus just the instinctual side of customer service. I mean, you got to have people who just think on their feet well and understand the reason for it, and then they'll do the right thing. And they need to know why they're doing the right thing. When it comes to hiring, I'm 100% process.
Really?
So we are on the same page.
All right, here we go.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how you get them to show up today. When I first started, Craigslist. And I did the same thing that we all do in corporate America. You must have this. You're required to do this. You will be doing these activities. You have to have these. You have to do that. You have to minimum of X. You have to know these. Now apply and tell me why you're good enough for this position.
Kind of like the Marines.
Right?
Yeah.
Are you good enough to be with me?
Yeah.
Today's world, gone.
Yeah.
Now, come join my wolf pack. Come join my cast of characters and my pirate crew and come be the artist you can be so you can make more money than you've ever made. You can have a better life than you've ever had. I have to sell them on the position to even show up now because of the world we're in, especially with COVID and the hiring thing. But I need to now demonstrate to them that this is a great opportunity. And I really truly think it is. I'm not lying. I don't make it up. But I went from being, you prove to me why you can work for me. And now it's, let me tell you why you want to come work for me. And when you come in, I want you to prove to me why you wouldn't want to work for me.
Right.
So I'm doing the whole thing. I'm selling them on the company. I'm asking the thing. And again, the first interviews I ever did, I did critical behavior interviewing. And I was sitting there digging in, and they were just giving me those answers that they had no idea what they were answering, but they were just trying to give me.
Peeling their skull back and diving into their brain.
And they're sitting there the whole time like, please get me out of here.
Yeah.
And I just went back to what you see is what you get, start interviewing these guys. So I put the shingle out there, and I have a great description that we use occasionally. We kind of go in and out with it. But one of the best ones I've used over the years is, I don't know who you are, but I know you take pride in your craft. I don't know who you are, but I know that at the end of the day, not only do you want to be rewarded financially, but you just want somebody to say, I really like what you did. You want to be rewarded that way. And you want to be left alone to do your craft and to do your artistry the way you intended to do it. And that has attracted a lot of people.
So you know what you are? You've become an expert fisherman. And what you were doing before was gill netting. You were gill netting.
As a person who's never fished successfully, I understand.
You know what I mean by gill? So you just put this big net out there, and then, whatever dreg of society is going to get stuck in the net, and then that's what you eat. You scrape off all the goo. So what you've learned is you're recruiting now more than hiring.
Recruiting now.
And the fishing analogy is, first of all, you've got to know where the fish are. And so you go to where the fish are, because you could be advertising in places. And there's lots of places where there's fish. There's trade schools and associations, if we're talking about home services. And we can broaden this to talk about a number of different industries. First of all, you have to know where you fish. But an expert fisherman then determines what's the best bait to use. And when you think about a fly fisherman, it used to drive me crazy because I was never a fly fisherman. I was always bait and spinners. And I could be out there just fighting the elements. And this is in the Pacific Northwest where, 45 degrees and a 45-degree angle on the rain is about my normal fishing circumstance. I'm standing on the bank. I'm just working it hard. And then you see the fly fisherman show up, and he looks through with his, UV glasses. He's checking the water. He's seeing what's hatching. And then he ties that correct fly, and then he actually can spot the fish, and then he just casts in front of it. Next thing you know, he's got this trophy trout, and I've still got an empty cooler. What you've learned to do is to be that fly fisherman. You learned what kind of bait to put out there. And I think to somebody who's starting a business, or they're thinking about hiring, or thinking about scaling, first of all, in my opinion, sales is your number one priority all the time.
Sales is your number one priority, and that's where you get to keep yourself in that seat as long as possible.
Right.
As you're scaling.
But the most important thing you will do for the health of your business is attract, train, and retain the best employees you possibly can. And if you get to the point where you need an employee, it's too late. Because you and I talked about before, you got to figure out how long does it take to onboard that person? How long does it normally take to hire a person? Right. You really need to always be recruiting. And what you've learned to do, and I'm sure you've had some frustrations where maybe you're looking on Indeed or some of these other sites and you're seeing what your competitors are doing. Well, what can I do that is a little bit more of attractive bait for these fish, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm doing. In fact, I'm starting something now that as this podcast will air, I'll probably be a couple weeks into it, or maybe even a month into it. I'm trying a whole social media approach to see if I can attract better talent in the handyman ranks. Because I had good success with my customer service reps, and we talked about that in a different episode about finding them because they're your number one touch.
Right.
And we got a lot of traction. I got a lot of feedback around the fact that you cannot win the Kentucky Derby with a donkey. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go back to that episode and you'll hear you cannot do that. But back to the point here about looking for these guys and then putting the right shingle out there and the right opportunity to let them know that this is a good place for these guys to show up. And we'll talk about this in a later episode. You know, I really view my guys as lone wolves. This is what makes them great. They are truly artists. They love to be pianists. They love to be painters. They love to be sculptors. They love to be carpenters. They're artists, but they want to be left alone to do their craft and get rewarded for it. Financially, one, but also just a slap on the back. They don't even need a lot of praise, is what you find, because they're used to foraging and hunting themselves. So when you're putting out there and getting that whole thing together, you got to really know where to fish, number one, and then
Yep.
what's the right bait for these people.
And then once you got a nibble, how to hook them. It's the 3 steps to
And that's-
recruiting, in my opinion.
You gotta hook them. Today's market, you should have a great place to work. You should have a place that's going to allow them to do the things they're going to do that's going to help your business. And in my case, I'm not going to talk about other companies. Let me talk about my case. These guys, if I brought them in and all I did was process, train, checklist. These guys would become domesticated dogs,
Mhm.
and they would hate their life, and every problem out there would become my problem.
So you're selling them on the story, the why.
The why they're doing what they did to do. They get to go out there.
No, but the why of your business. I mean,
Oh, the why to come to my wolf pack?
Yeah.
You bet. I think we got a great wolf pack, of course. But they have to believe it too. And they have to see the benefit that they get, and they get to see that they don't have to do all the stuff I have to do, like financials and P&L and balance sheet and paying those pesky taxes and going through those stupid insurance audits. And if you're listening, especially insurance people, they're stupid.
are you saying you don't want them as a sponsor or
My new one, I might like him.
yeah?
Nah, for right now, though. Well, I'm kidding you. No, probably not. What? Man. So, yeah, you bring him out in the interview, and the interview process is totally different than the world I came up in, that you came up in.
Mm.
It is 180 degrees away from corporate America. It is, come on in, talk to me.
You don't. So you start with a phone interview, I'm assuming.
Always, yeah. Phone interview. I just set up the scene. I say, let me tell you a little bit about my business.
Can
And you
I back up just real quick for
Yep.
folks who are listening who maybe never interviewed? The phone interview is critical. And one of the things I can recommend is you need to script out your interview, because let's say you do the GillNet and you've got 30 people who apply. That's pretty daunting to go ahead and call 30 people. I mean, it's a big time commitment that you don't have. And so I would recommend 20 minutes tops, maybe write down 10 questions.
I don't even get to 10, but 20 minutes is all you get on them on the phone.
But I would say write down 10 questions, because what you'll find out is you want to ask the same questions to everybody. And what you'll find is you think you have a good question, but it's really not getting the response that you want. So you backfill it with a different question. So start with 10, maybe you get 5 or 6 in. And what you're trying to do at that point is, obviously, can they fog a mirror? But do they have the basic competency? But what you really want to know is what, in my opinion, how do they sound on the phone? Because this person is going to be interacting with your customers more than likely.
Yep.
So they have to be reasonably personable, and they have to have basic competency. They have to have some sort of desire. At that point, book the interview.
You're looking for the want to, the customer service. You're also looking for the negativity,
Yep.
right? Because if you just ask those certain questions about, hey, well, just tell me a little bit more about yourself. Well, let me tell you about this last job I'm at, man. This guy, man, he shorted me money. It's like, all right, if we're already there and you didn't even get to what you really can do, then you're not going to be the positive guy that we're looking for. Because I'm looking for guys to be positive energy coming in here with a want to, who want to go out there and do the thing they want to do.
It's funny for folks listening. Chris and I come into this. We talk for a few minutes about what we want to talk about. We independently write notes. And on my notes is any bitching on this call will only magnify once you hire them.
Right. Any bitching on this call will absolutely 100 freaking percent.
It's like
amplify.
a first date. If somebody's grumpy on the first date, they're going to get happier.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. The phone interview is good. I keep it really light, keep it quick. I do set up the tone, set it up for them so I can get through it. And in the beginning, when you don't know what you're doing, you're listening a lot. And after you've been at it for a long time, you're looking for those key trigger points. Positive, confident, knows what he's doing in the field by using the right terms. And again, I'm talking about home services because that's what I've known lately.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the same thing. Looking back on it now, I wonder if I could have applied that to corporate America back in the day when you'd have to go through a full day-long interview, an interview with 6 different people with 8 different questions. And the last guy says, can you integrate this problem for me to show me that you know calculus because you're a mechanical engineering student? And you look at him and say, I think this interview's over, and I'm walking out the door. That's hypothetical. That was definitely not anything that I can tell you
It
from
really
personal
just came off the
experience.
top of your head very easily.
I heard that happen. I don't know.
Well, and you're
But-
not just hiring your lone wolves. You're also hiring your staff, the person that's answering your phone, maybe quality assurance people. I mean, there's a lot of different kinds of hiring that we
So
can talk
I like to do, and this is back to retaining people, I like to show people there's a promotion path if they want it.
Mhm. So there's another piece to setting the hook.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Hey, there's opportunities for you. We got remodeling side. My quality assurance manager started with me as a technician. On the customer service side, you can tell if they're warm on the phone. That's a big part. And when you see them in person, you get a good feel for it with that great question. Now, with my estimators and all of my first touch sales guys, I always take them to lunch. And it's a sit-down lunch. And you want to see how they interact with the staff. And you want to see how they interact with that hostess. You want to see how they interact with
So
the
this
waitress.
is a lunch that happens after you've done some interviewing and you think you want to hire them, and this is the last step.
Yeah,
Meet
this
the
is
team.
the, hey, man, really like that conversation we had. Thanks for coming in. I think this is a good fit. Let's go grab some lunch and just talk about how we, what the next steps are. Because most of my guys are already employed, especially on the sales side.
So you're a poacher, not a fisherman.
No, they came to me. I go
Okay.
through I've done ZipRecruiter. I've done Indeed. You guys can both sponsor me or at least reduce my fees a little bit for the love of God. Oh my God. But I've done that. But you do that when you take them out on an interview and you just do a lunch with them. And it's not a long lunch. It's not like one of those hour and a half martini lunches. This is a 45-minute. I make it pretty quick, just a sandwich, keep it quick and clean to see how they're going to act and interact and how they do things, to see if they smile, if they have that warm, sunny disposition, see if the waitress or the waiter kind of pick up on it and perk up to them. And I actually play more of the kind of the quiet guy, which is tough. That's really, I mean, you know what? I am an actor. I'm not an actor. I'm a movie star. Peter O'Toole, long old reference. But yeah, so I play that. That's always been helpful for me there. Because you want to figure out if they're going to fit into your culture when you decide that this is the right fit for them. And then of course I go with the offer letter. And what I found lately is a lot of people want to hear that there's a safety net, that there's going to be an onboarding process. So now we've got them in. How do you keep them in?
Right.
Onboarding, I think that might be the word of 2021, is that onboarding is so critical. I actually am in the process of onboarding a new salesperson and 2 new handymen. And I think we're doing it much better than we did a year ago. But I'm so concerned because I got some feedback, not from our process, but from other people and other companies, is that you may not have them as long as you'd hope. But if they don't like the onboarding experience, that taste is going to stay in their mouth for a long time and it won't come out. And as the more I heard about it, I was like, wow, that's really important. So when you onboard, you have to show you're committed to them. Instead of saying, oh, that's right, I forgot to get you a laptop. Oh, I didn't get you an email. Oh, I'll get you on the system
Right.
towards the end of the week. Right now, you're just going to have to keep your timesheet on that piece
It's
of paper.
kind of like parenting. If you wait to parent until they're teenagers, it's too late.
Yeah.
You got to start when they're toddlers. And the examples that you set, yeah, I totally get that.
So onboarding, 1 of 2 ways you can go with that, right? For me, I like to get these guys in for culture training with Chris, the owner of the company, who is working on the business.
Are you so big now that you're doing the third person?
Well, Chris likes to think of himself as a little bit bigger than just anything else. So when Chris talks, Chris thinks he's really freaking important.
So they have their one-on-one with Chris.
So we do the culture training for an hour and a half, but they have to prove themselves first. So I had another owner tell me they work at my company for a month before they earn the opportunity to come in for training with me. And I was like, I hear you. I brought that up, and I brought my office staff in, and I said, what do you guys think of that approach? And every one of them said, nope, not at our company. That doesn't work. They need to hear from you, hear why you started it, why it's going on, because then they will go out there and they will be that lone wolf that you hired, and he knows he's part of the wolf pack now when you tell him that. And that's what we've done. So I invest the time. The cool thing about our onboarding process is guys wash out pretty quick. They don't stick around, linger, and waste all of our time and money. They decide pretty quickly if this is the place for them. And then when they stick, my tenure has gone up exponentially, where most of my handymen now have been with me for 2 years. We're in this business, 7 months was what I heard in the beginning, and that's what I experienced but 13 years ago, the first 2 or 3 years.
So is the washout early during the onboarding period as a result of you're trying to Are you running a Navy SEALs operation?
No, it's whether they think this is the right place for them. They've heard the culture. Then we bring them in for some operational training around how to use our technology and our tablets. And then they go, okay, this is the place for me. This is not the place for me. And years ago, when it was paper-based and I didn't do all the onboarding and there's no such thing as culture training, it was you sat with me, we went through the ethics document, you signed something, you worked with me for a day, then I set you off and you work with some other guys for a while, and then eventually you get your own jobs. And they would stay for 5-6 months and then hit the road. These guys know right away, boom, this is for me or not.
So, Chris, you've obviously refined this over how many years you've been doing this?
13 and a half.
Yeah. Now, let's talk to the person who read your book.
Hey, my book, From the Zoo to the Wild, your guide to entrepreneurial freedom wealth.
Yeah, and they're
Let's
like,
continue.
Chris, I listened to you and I just quit my job and I've started my business. I need to hire somebody. I don't have time for the culture class with Chris. I don't have an onboarding process. You're obviously selling something different. Now you can sell a promotional path. You can sell being part of this wolf pack. But if you were starting over based on everything that you've learned, what do you advise that guy? What are you selling when it's just you and you're hiring employee number 1, 2, or 3?
That's good that you brought me all the way back to it. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, when you get together and over a couple beers, which we do often.
We're doing right now.
We often think fondly back to the beginning.
Yeah.
And what do you sell in the beginning? Well, you sell, hey, get it on the ground floor opportunity, an opportunity to really grow. You can make a difference in my company. I'm looking for somebody who wants to be with me shoulder by shoulder, building this company, and you get to be employee number 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go ahead and thank one of our sponsors. Are you in the home service business and train your employees to represent your company in the right way when they're taking care of customers? Are they providing a 110% customer experience? If you aren't getting those rave reviews that you expect or those repeat customers that you crave, then you need to get the homeserviceinstitute.com training programs. These training programs talk the language of your technician and help them figure out how to align your goals with their wants. Go ahead and check out the homeserviceinstitute.com and all of their training modules, and they will turn your employees into 110% customer experience providers. That's the homeserviceinstitute.com. And now let's get back to listening to what the guys have to say. You can sell that easily to somebody who has that mentality that you're looking for. But you got to be wanting to hire that person who is a little self-directed. Because let's face it, my lone wolves in corporate America, if they were programmers, if they were project managers, if they were sitting behind a desk, they would hate themselves, and corporate America would hate them because these guys want to be out there and be artists every day. So I knew after a long time, it took me about a year or two to figure out these guys were a lot different than hiring corporate America guys. And I don't put them all in a box, but when you get into a big organization in the Army, you've got to learn, and that's what boot camp is. They break you down, they build you back up, and then here we go. And in our world, and you start in the beginning, it's like, I don't have time to break you down. So I had one page of my company policy, and this is my ethics. And it said, don't smoke in the customer's house. Always wear my logoed shirts. Always keep yourself clean cut. Have a cell phone in operation. Because remember, I started when a lot of these guys didn't even have cell phones. And when they did, they had to have that flip phone. So you had to have one of those. And they were like, well, I don't get a phone. I'm like, no, you don't get a phone. You got to have a phone. And, in today's world, we're all like, well, everybody has a phone. In fact, I have a phone before I have a TV at home anymore.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, you sell that, and you get to stay with me. And the cool thing is, too, I'm not going to give you a bunch of process and policy. Let's just get after it, and let's go make customers happen. The beautiful thing about small businesses, we're focused on the customer. We're not sitting there in big corporate America looking at internally fighting or working with other people inside to make sure they do their job for you. Man, we're focused on the customer, big guy. Let's go. So I think that's a great sell.
Yeah, and I think, when you get out on the ground floor, this company can be whatever we want it to be. And the bigger we make it, the more successful we are, the more successful you'll be. If you want to manage other people, we can grow into that. I mean, there's a lot of things. You're going to be selling a dream at that point. But I do think somebody who's at employee number 1, 2, or 3 can take a lot out of what you've learned in the 13 years and still bring it to that first or second hire.
Yeah, I think so, too. I think, if you're listening to this and picking up points, sell your company, sell the process that you're going to do, sell the dream that you're doing. If you're hiring for a technician or a CSR, you need to sell them on the company. You're selling a salesman, you need to back off and let the salesman sell you back. Because that's the other thing I've learned too over these years is that if you're a salesman and you're selling your company and your dream, he's just selling you right back. He's buying into your dream. You need him to really figure out if this is going to be a great fit for him too. So on the sales side, that's why I take him to lunch to see if these guys are salesmen and they're into it and they're self-directed, which is another big word, but it's true. With my guys, they have to be self-directed sales guys.
So let's talk about when you start. I mentioned earlier, in my opinion, you're always recruiting, just like you're always selling. I don't care how busy you are. I don't care how fully staffed you are. And I don't know how many employees you have, but a little rule of thumb that I've always had is you take any group of 10 employees and 2 of them are superstars, 6 of them are in the middle, and 2 of them are walking dead. And the walking dead can suck the 6 down with them. And the superstars possibly could bring them up. You got the Michael Jordan made the players around him better. So even though you're fully staffed with 10, let's say, you still need to always be recruiting because you're going to have eventual turnover just due to life happening.
Life happens. In fact, in my world, life happens a lot.
Your people live a lot in 24 hours more than the average person.
Yeah, we have a lot of life that happens. I'm shocked at how many people seem to die in New York.
Yeah.
And how many kids have to go to an emergency.
How many grandparents they had that died?
Yeah. It reminds me
That's my 14th grandmother that just passed away, Chris.
So, there's a lot of life that happens. And life happens to all of us. But you're right. You've got to build that culture that says, coming here and being part of the team because we're all there for the customer. When you don't show today, that just puts the burden on the rest of your team. But you're like, I'm a lone wolf, WYSIWYG. I'm an artist. I can't do it. Well, when you don't show up and maybe you do have a culture where a lot of people come into the same area all the time, those 2 negatives really start to drag down everybody else.
Can we put on the little to-do list a podcast on your culture class?
A podcast on my culture class? I would love to do that.
I think that would be really cool. So you need...
All right, you all asked for it. I'm bringing it. Culture.
I'm gonna actually write you mail. That so it goes into your mail.
My first
bag.
Official mail bag, as opposed to the one who just verbally says, "Hey, that was awesome."
You are so antiquated. But
I want mail through the U.S. mail. I want 55 cents on the stamp, or I don't know how much it is.
You want a handwritten from So the thing is, though, is you always have to be recruiting. You always have to be selling. You always have to be recruiting, in my opinion. Those are kind of the 2 things that you always have to be doing. And you may think you have more sales than you know what to do with. There's going to be a day when you don't. And you don't want to get into that inchworm effect to where, our sales dropped off and now I need to start marketing again. And you never want to get into a position where you're so screwed with a lack of talent that you start making bad hires just to plug holes. And so my recommendation, and I would love to hear your opinion on where this happens, but in theory, and this can't physically exist, but you always want to stay like a half employee ahead. And you've got, I know it sounds stupid.
You're a half employee ahead.
You're a half of an employee ahead. And that's kind of thinking like, what is my sales trajectory? Am I plotting a certain amount of turnover? How do I actually stay staffed enough to where I'm not killing myself with overhead, but to where my salespeople are aggressively selling because we know we can take care of the business because they'll self-regulate your business if you don't have enough people. And my opinion is you never want to get to the point where if you're always out there recruiting, and there's a lot of ways you can do it. We mentioned it earlier. You can be at trade shows. You could go to trade schools. Your network, actually your former employees, if you're a good person, can be a great referral source. You've got this network that you've built that you can find good people. And I don't know what the best current sports analogy would be, but let's just say if you run across the LeBron James of plumbers and you don't have a spot, I think you need to make a spot.
You definitely make a spot on that one. I 100% agree. I remember my best employee today, I wouldn't say my best because they're all great, but one of my best.
I just illustrated that two of them aren't.
He walked in. Well, they're not. That's true. He walked into my office. I wasn't there, and he talked to my my office manager and said, "I'd really like to apply." And she said, "Hey, this guy came in. He really wants to apply." I'm like, "Yeah, I've heard that before." They walk in off the street. They have no idea what we're about. He comes back 4 days later. Said, "I didn't hear back. I really would like to talk to somebody. I happen to be in the back," and I interviewed him on the spot. And he had researched my company. I didn't have to sell him on anything. He had been working on his own for years and just got tired of having to do all the other stuff that you have to do when you run your own business. Invoicing, billing, collecting, all the other stuff you got to do, and you got to find people to help you. And he's been with me now, we're going on 7 years. It was the guy, at the time, I was full. I didn't need another guy. I didn't have enough work. And I was like, but this guy was so cool and so hungry. I was like, all right, man, come on, let's go do it. And I told my sales guys, I said, get out there, go, let's go. We got another guy here. Because I tell my sales guys all the time, you're responsible for putting 6 families food on their tables, because you should be selling enough work for 6 of our guys to be doing the work. And that challenges the sales guys because they're very competitive that way. But with my technicians, sports analogies don't work as much, so we don't do that. But
what's worse, if you lose a salesperson or a tech?
A tech for me, really, right now is worse because the skill sets that I'm looking for with these guys are so cool. They really are artists. I can't say that enough. I say this.
How long was it before you figured out they were artists doing this?
I would say a couple of years. Again, you have that mentality that construction workers. I've always had an affinity for construction workers. I think framers are amazing. Roofers, anybody who can get up that high and do the work they do is amazing. So I've always.
Yeah, if it were up to me, the entire world would be single level.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's no. I can't do it anymore. I used to be able to run around like a monkey, but now I got old and I can get treed pretty quickly. But I think they really are artists. And when you think about it, and that permeates from the top. You've mentioned this before in the past. I do think that my mentality around there definitely permeates through everybody, and it comes top down as they realize that I say this all the time. These guys are remarkable people doing extraordinary activities in people's homes every day. With that mentality, why would you not want to come to work today? With the mentality of I get to go be an artist today, why it makes getting up. Here in Atlanta, we don't have cold mornings, but we have really hot summers. It makes 3 o'clock in the afternoon when you're sweating and your shoes are squeaking because you got so much sweat in them, and you're finishing something up and you don't really feel like an artist. But when you get in that truck and you turn the AC on and you go, bang, I'm an artist today and I am Beethoven.
But what you just said would make me want to work for you. Because there are plenty of places, drywall hangers needed, blah, blah, blah. I'm assuming you actually look and see what your competition is doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I always look at what they're doing.
To me, to go someplace where somebody, just in the way they talk about the craft that I do, they speak about it in a way like you just did, I want to be part of that.
I think if you're inspiring somebody the right way, that's you should be talking about.
I truly appreciate.
Oh, I do.
This, yeah.
I mean, the only I know how to do the work, but these guys are all way better at it than I am.
Yeah. Not
because they do it more often, but and actually, I'm lying. It's because they're better at it than I am.
Let me ask you this: when you're hiring, let's have a continuum here. On one end is competency in the trade, and the other is character. What's more important to you?
Yeah, that's a hard one. I would say right now, the world we're in post-COVID and the lack of people who are working in the marketplace, I am looking for character, and we're going to start training for skills. I used to look for skills, and I would train back, not on the character, but on the customer service piece. I figured I could dress them up enough that, not a character thing. I mean, you say character. So do you really know the character of a person? I mean, if you're going to put a cap in somebody's ass, I don't want you to come work for me anyway.
No, but there's
so if you're going to beat your old lady, yeah, get the hell out of my place.
So how do you figure out if they've got the right character?
So you ask them a couple questions, and you'll know right away. I mean, again, they're WYSIWYG, man.
What the heck is WYSIWYG?
WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get.
Oh, okay.
And it's a computer development term, but I bring it to the world.
Yeah.
So anyway, I mean, when you listen to this guy, if he has had any domestic violence in his past, you'll see it.
That's a bad thing?
That is the absolute 100% fucking no-no. Yeah, for me. I mean, that's total disrespect for everything in your family and what you did.
Well, and it is, of course, you have to go by EEOC guidelines. You got to be careful about what you talk about in an interview. And so to determine somebody's character is actually a little bit of a, field of landmines that you have to be careful about. But if they mention any kind of civic involvement, the youth group leader, a baseball coach, anything like that kind of tells me, okay, other people want them to coach my kids. That probably means he or she is a good guy or girl, right?
My best estimator right now is the Boy Scout troop leader. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool because he gets out there, he cares about his kids. Do I look at him and go, hey, man, when did you stop beating your wife? Of course not. I didn't, because that question can't be answered, by the way. Think about that one.
Can't be asked.
And it can't be asked. But I never asked the question, but you can tell if, because that's just one thing, if you can't tell I'm passionate about that. Because when you work in people's houses, you're going to run across somebody who's going to rub you the wrong way. And sometimes, just because you look a certain way, they might decide that you're not going to be able to work for them. And it's different strokes for different folks all the time. And it's not necessarily that your guy was bad or the person was bad. It was just not a good fit.
So when you're interviewing, are you throwing a situational question or a behavioral question to...
I was waiting for that, and I'm glad you asked that. And the answer is you can't, because these guys don't do critical behavior interviewing. When you say, give me a time when you had a customer who was up in your grill and couldn't leave you alone, what did you do to get them out of it? They'll answer the way they think you want them to answer. So you find them by getting them going and just start talking about different things about, hey, what'd you do there? Hey, man, what do you do, crown molding? So how are you with crown molding? You like doing this? All right. How do you do your miter box? Oh, yeah. Have you ever had a problem where you get stuck there? And then you kind of get them off guard, and then you can start to hear about that. Or, I've been a bad boy, or I've done some things that probably I shouldn't talk about. And you're like, okay.
Yeah, have you ever been so pissed that you threw your hammer through a wall of a customer's house?
If you get them off and just get them talking, they'll tell you enough, because the domestic violence one for me is a big no-no. I have taken guys who have been convicted of theft by taking.
You've hired them.
Hired them. And you're like, well, you're sending them to people's house, they're going to steal from you. I can't believe you did that. I'm like, it happened 20 years ago. I listened to the guy told me the whole story, then I asked some other questions, and then I pulled the old, hey, hang on a minute, and I leave, and I left my wallet on the table, and I walked out the room, and I came back in, and he was sitting in the same spot. He's all right? He knew. You're like, well, who's going to grab your wallet?
Yeah, right.
The one who can't help himself. So is that, did I end up hiring that guy? We actually gave him a shot. He just didn't have a skill set, and he had to work with one of my guys for a month.
Yeah, I've done the same thing. I actually hired some people who'd actually done time for something, and
I think you should. I think the fact that we just talked about this, it's bullshit, right? If they did the time and they are really rehabilitated, we got a great story here at my company. It's not, he doesn't work for me. It's his son. The kid is a Panera Bread employee doing a great job, getting promoted all over the place. He did something stupid when he was 17.
Right.
He's 30 now. He did something at 17. He turned 18, so he got tried as an adult. He screwed up. All right, now let's see what he do. Now these guys are like rewarding this guy all over the place, saying he's the best guy going. And you know what? I've seen him. I've actually gone to the store. He's a great guy.
Yeah, and the situation I had, it was these people that did something and it was pretty bad, but they went to prison for quite some time. But while they were in there, they ended up writing a book, and now they go back and speak at prisons about why you shouldn't do what they did. I'm like, I think this is somebody who learned their lesson, and now they have the character I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Instead of immediately writing off.
I'm not saying everybody go, the Trusted Toolbox does not have a bunch of convicts and felons, but I'm also saying you don't have to write them all off. I mean, you got to take each interview as it comes, and then it comes into, all right, once you bring them on, how are you going to onboard them? And onboarding, I think that's critical, because that's where these people will go, these guys aren't going to put up with my BS, so I got to get out of here. And I think that's what they see a lot from us and our
How
culture.
long is your official onboarding process?
About a month. It's about 30 days. And so you say, is it a 30 day?
30 days of Chris culture?
No, there's only 1.5 hours of Chris culture, because a little Chris goes a long way. But they get the feel for who I am. But then they get a feel for what it's going to take, because I get to work on my business a lot. So they don't see me a lot. And I say that at the end. I'm like, you will not see me a lot, but that's why you're here, because you get to go do what you do best. And the person who's going to help you get there the best are your scheduler and our quality assurance manager, who can help you in the field, because this whole team is behind you and we want to see you be nothing but successful. So when they come in with me, we talk about my 6 principles of my company, but then we talk about how they're set up for success. I expect them to be the face of my company. And as long as they complete their job with quality and every transaction with quality, they're going to do really well here.
So are we actually doing the culture podcast now?
No, but I was getting really excited. I'm going to throttle back. All right.
Okay.
You got to put the bit in seahorse. You can't keep whipping me. I'm going to keep going. Because I can go there.
You're a thoroughbred. You just got to be reined in.
I
Not
have
kicking ass like a donkey.
No, you can't kick me. Well, you can kick me in the ass. I respond, but you got to rein me back in. But yeah, I think when you're looking for the people and you don't know, and you bring them in too, you don't know who's going to be a great fit, who's not a great fit, but you can tell.
So what is that 30 days though? That onboarding? I mean, what?
So our 30 days, and again, it can be shorter. Like if you're a rock star or you're a thoroughbred, it turns into 15 days and you're off and running, because you proved to us that you know what you're doing. That we've already had all the background checks, so we know you're safe, and we know with our process that we have today and the people we have around him that he's going to be safe. 30 days, if he just didn't prove himself all the way out yet, skills wise, maybe doesn't have all the talent yet, and he's afraid that he might go out there and screw up. So we don't put him in as a lead technician, as we call him. So 30 days, and after 30 days, then it's not as formal, but it will be much more formal going forward. We'll sit down and say, all right, what went well? What didn't go well? You ranked yourself in these skills this way. Here's what we're seeing. Here's where our best successful guys are. Here's where you need to be. And so we do that after 30 days, because all of these guys expect to be the top dog. That's the best part about these guys.
Is that right?
Oh, they do.
So they're very competitive.
They're competitive in their own little way, and it's not a sports competitiveness.
So what are they competing?
They're the best artist.
The best artist. Yeah. So it's not the most productive.
Yeah. Imagine a group of painters with, who's the guy with the big old afro hair back in the day painting?
Bob Ross.
Bob Ross. Imagine Bob Ross teaching
little
painting
clouds.
If they were in there, every one of them in there thinks they're the best painter, and when their painting is done, they'll think they'll have the best painting. Every single one. You guarantee that.
So how are they measuring themselves when they're out doing jobs in different people's houses?
They can't, because for our group, you don't come together and you don't work in the same office all the time. So you've seen competitiveness and infighting probably when people are together, but these guys are out there and they have
because in a sales environment, you got the stats on the board.
Stats on the board.
Yeah.
We have a stat in our training room that comes in, so they know who the top dogs are. But when they make a certain level, they make a bonus. And we celebrate those successes. We celebrate the bonuses. We celebrate reviews that were done well by customers, and we pick different guys all the time.
So this is part of the retention piece, but it's also part of trying to drive excellence.
Drive excellence and the retention.
So what are you measuring? And this is kind of getting off of hiring and recruiting, but it'll be part of the retaining piece. But
it's actually part of the hiring, because we tell them this is what we expect.
Okay.
You expect to make however your personal and professional goals are. Okay, and I don't know what those are. So for some, it might be that I get to coach my kids' baseball team on Saturday afternoons or Saturday mornings. For some, it might be I have to make a certain amount of money every week so I can pay my bills and provide for my family. And each one of them has a different goal. They're not all the same.
That is a big nugget for somebody who's starting to hire, is you think you know what people want or what would be a good job, but you kind of need to find out from that individual what motivates them, because it could be time off to see their kid play baseball. It could be I want to make more money than I can possibly stand. And it could be I just want to do my job and get a pat on the back once in a while. It could be anything. And you can't make those assumptions. You have to find that out.
You have to find that out. Definitely. I'm going to tell this story. I know we're getting towards the end, but I got to tell this story.
Okay.
So I did not start a software development company. I've started a handyman and remodeling company. But I know a guy who started a software development company, and he hired a bunch of younger guys, as we like to call them, millennials. All right, they go out there and they deliver a $500,000 project. And him and his partner came to these 10 developers and said, you tell us what you want. If we can get this done by the end of the month, the guys didn't know the contingency on the timeline, you tell us what you want to be rewarded and we'll do everything. He said, we were holding back. and we were going to give them all $10,000 apiece. They all come in and said, we've all talked about it. We would like to rent out this one place where it has this really big TV so we can all play PlayStation together with these multiple channels. And so they went and rented this place out for like $4 or $5 grand or whatever. That's all they had. That's all they wanted.
How many people were in that crew?
10.
Oh my God!
They were already ready.
They were ready to $100,000.
They were ready to spend $100,000 to reward these guys, and all these guys wanted was that. Now they went back and did more. They took care of them a little bit, but again, ask the people what they want, and I think you might be surprised. You think it's more money. You think everybody wants a yacht. You think everybody wants their own jet. You think everybody wants that big mansion in the country club that wants. But, a lot of these people don't want that. They want something different. In fulfillment for everybody, and success looks a lot different. If you don't find out what pushes their buttons, and I did not know it all in the beginning. I didn't know. I've done contests. I used to do analogies about sports, realized that sports did not ring with these guys. We do different contests to keep them going. But what they all like to do is at the end of each day is get rewarded for what they did, demonstrate their artistry, and then have somebody just tell them, man, that was really cool.
So a couple of quick rewards that you do, given the fact that they're not together very often, they can't compare painting jobs.
My best thing is Christmas. So I grew up in a Catholic family. My mother was a Christmas freak.
Is this an idea that you had that actually you didn't?
So we're going to tangent a little bit, but I'm going to tell my story, then I'm going to tell you the story that I told Alan. So I've given Alan some great advice over the years. So let me tell you this story. So here's what I do. We do periodic contests throughout the year. We'll launch one, and we do one towards Christmas. And our very last training meeting of every year is the Christmas holiday. And so we do, and I say Christmas because I'm a Christian guy. I went to Catholic school. I did the whole thing. I believe in holidays. It's all good. But I think everybody understands the spirit of it, of what I'm trying to do, whether they believe in Christmas or not. So here's what we do. We do contests, and it's based on reviews, yard signs, pictures that they send before and after. They get certain points for all that because those are all things that help me as the owner get what I want, which just shows me great customer service and stuff that I can show other people about how great we are. What it helps them with is their need is that they get points for it. So at the end, when we get together, we have the Christmas tree, and we have presents under the Christmas tree, and they're all lined out. And they're everything from organization to Sawzall to tools of the trade to gift cards to take their spouses out to dinner. And the top point getter gets to go first. And then we just go around the room.
Oh, do you do a white elephant?
And no, they get to go up there and pick it up. And he picks up number one.
Oh, they're not wrapped?
No, they get to see what they want.
Okay.
So they pick the first one, and then everybody gets to go. And we usually have enough for 3 rounds. And so these guys usually walk out of there with tools, gift cards, things to show their family that this is a great place to work.
That's super cool.
And that has been super cool because the guys light up when they see something that they've seen maybe at Depot or Lowe's or Ace, and they're like, man, I got to get that one. Man, that's cool. I get to get that. And it's so wild to watch these guys come up because, number one, they get up there with pride. I'm number one. And then number 6 gets up there with pride. I'm number 6. And number 12 gets up there and says, well, at least I get to pick the 12th thing, and I'm proud too.
And I'm assuming over time, the number 12 guy is like, somewhere in the back of his head, I need to put out a couple more yard signs over this year
So I get what I want because I want more yard signs out for advertising, of course, as the owner. I get what I want because I get more reviews that tell everybody how great we are because a lot of people won't do it, as we've all talked about this before. Mm-hmm. And I get the third thing was I get these guys motivated to go out there and make a great customer experience. So I get what I want, and then I get to fulfill their needs. So I'll go out there, and over the year we have an agreement with Home Depot. We get some rebates, and I just save the gift cards so I can go buy all the tools and stuff for them. And then I've got guys go out there, and they love shopping for this stuff too. You know, my QA manager, my sales manager, they love shopping and finding great deals and the specials. So even these guys are getting into it. And so we cook a meal, we do the whole thing, the training in that culture of welcome to the wolf pack.
Yeah.
And in the wolf pack, you get to eat more, you get to rest more, you get to have more time, and you get to F more. That's right.
Is one of the things that they get points for employee referrals?
We actually have put that out there, and these guys do not like to go find other people. I'm shocked at that. Over the years, I have put out there, anybody who brings somebody in, I'll pay you up to $1,000 if the guy stays for 6 months.
Is it because they don't know other people in their trade, or they're actually afraid that they're going to jeopardize their own
Never
business?
afraid of themselves, because remember, our artists are amazing. Everyone in there thinks they're Beethoven. Everybody thinks they're Bob Ross. Everybody thinks their paint is the best. It's just because when they go in there, they're going into Home Depot to take care of their business, and they're walking out. They're going into Lowe's to take care of their business, and they're walking out. And when they go see somebody at a QT, when they're filling up gas station, and look at the other guy going, you're just not as good as me. When somebody comes up, he'll say, hey, it's a great place to work. You ought to give it a shot. And I put the number out there to get employee referrals. I really wish I could get more, because I think these guys know what it takes to be successful here, and they know they get rewarded for it.
What's your reward? Do you mind my asking?
Well, the reward is that, again, the contest, the getting back, and we all went to. We live in Atlanta, so I took everybody to the Atlanta Braves baseball game, and instead of just sitting somewhere, I got to. I took them all into a suite. And it was really cool, man. We lived the life of Riley. It was awesome.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So, anyway, we've done a good job of talking about how to bring people in, but we might be droning on, and we have to probably take a break.
Yeah, I think so. But do you want to recap what we did?
I'll let you do it because I can't remember. Man, that was a 9.5% beer we started with.
It was,
and
then I never measured what it was I made. I want to say it's 5%, but
I hope it was. But
recruiting's like fishing, so that's one of the things I brought. You got to go where the fish are. You got to have the right bait, and then when you get a nibble, you got to hook them. So it's not hiring. You're really a recruiter.
I agree. And then for the job that you're looking for, you got to put everything out there, and then start to hire for it, and then really work hard on bringing them in quickly and efficiently, and let them know they're part of your team.
Yeah, I think that's critical. You got to know what you want. You got to know what you're looking for.
Yep.
And you have to have a process. And I will say, do spend time learning how to be a good interviewer. There's so much stuff on the internet. We can talk about that on another podcast, but there's just simple things like the classic biggest mistake is most people do not know how to ask a good question and then shut up and let the person answer it. Because usually the person who's interviewing ends up doing a lot more talking than listening, and it should be the other way around.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's good. And I'll let you talk. I'll let you finish the whole thing. I was holding back, baby.
I'm so proud.
All right. Until next time, everybody, have a great day and make it a fun adventure.
Go Braves.
And go Braves. Woo! Thank you for listening to this episode of the Small Business Safari. Remember, your positive attitude will help you achieve that higher altitude you're looking for in the wild world of small business ownership. And until next time, make it a great day.